Hello everyone, previously we discussed the integration of left and right brain. Now let's talk about upstairs and downstairs brain. In the previous episode, in order to connect the left and right brain together, there are two strategies. First of all, we use the first strategy, connect and redirect. Just connect to the right brain and then redirect to the left brain. Tap into the emotional part, and then when the kids are calm, you need to, teach them logic and reasonable thinking skills. And the second strategy is to name it to tame it. That means ask the children to tell a story about the incident so that we can tap into both parts of the brain. Now let's jump straight to the other domain of this integration we call upstairs and downstairs brain. As you know that one of the most important skills we can teach our children is to make wise decisions in the tense situations. We want them to pause before acting, to consider the consequences, to be considerate, and to make ethical and moral judgment. So how do we do it? Right. Let's start with some understanding about the upstairs and the downstairs brain first. Downstairs brain is the lower part of the brain that include brainstem and limbic region. It is located in the lower parts of the brain, from the top of your neck to the bridge of your nose. It is very primitive, as responsible for basic functions like breathing and blinking, innate reactions and impulses like fight or flight response, and for strong emotions like anger and fear. So one easy example is when your face just completely turns red when you line up for 2 hours and then you realize that the tickets end up being sold out. And it is a very primitive response to certain triggers that do not need analytical thinking. Upstairs brain, on the other hand, is made up of cerebral cortex and other parts. So these parts are often behind your forehead, and this is a highly self engine in your brain, and it accounts for logic, reasonings, imagination, and planning. And it is also responsible for sound decision making and planning, emotional and bodily control, self-understanding, empathy, and morality. Our goal is to integrate both sides of the brain together, called vertically integrated, that I introduced this concept in the very first video of the lesson, in order to help your child express care and empathy with others, and also to regulate their emotions during difficult time and survive the day-to-day difficulties. Now let's talk about the unfinished upstairs. First thing you need to know is about the development gap. So while the downstairs brain is well developed at birth, the downstairs brain isn't fully mature until a person reaches around 25 years old. So it remains under massive construction before it undergoes an intensive remodel that lasts into adulthood. So if your child programs their upstairs brain in the right way, then their adulthood will also benefit from this ripple effect. An easy understanding of this is to compare it to the house that is being constructed. So while the house is under construction, the upstairs brain is usually completed first, consisting of concrete pillars and base. But then if you go to the upstairs, you can see that most parts remain unfinished, like the roof remains transparent. You can see the patch of sky, and there are construction tools all around here and there. Therefore, you can observe that children often fail to fully function their upstairs brain. This is because of one part of the brain that is responsible for tantrum. We call it amygdala. So amygdala is a part of your limbic brain of the downstairs brain. Its job is to quickly process and express emotions, especially anger and fear. It is prone to alert of being threatened. So when it senses danger, it completely hijacks the brain of the reasoning part, we call it the upstairs brain, and then it allows you to respond to that situation as quickly as possible. For example, like you stumble upon a passenger suddenly walking across the path that you are driving toward. And then this is the response by the amygdala that you have to turn your car away and try to, stay away from the incidents as long as you can save that person's life. And it helps you deal with the difficult situations without having to go through the upstairs brain, or we call the reasoning part of your brain. However, amygdala is only useful during the rare situation, but then in normal situations we want children to be controlled. We want them to be empathetic, reasonable, understandable. Alright, let's talk about tantrums. So there are two types of tantrum we call upstairs and downstairs tantrum. Upstairs tantrums occurs when a child essentially decides to throw a fit, means become angry until she gets what she wants. She could instantly stop what you give in her demands or warn her that she lose certain privileges if persisted. She also uses her upstairs brain to manipulate you, but with certain firm boundary affirmation and advice on appropriate behavior. She'll follow you. Downstairs brain, on the other hand, occurs when a child bursts into anger, like frustration and simply tantrums all of a sudden out of nowhere. This kind of tantrum is often controlled solely by the downstairs brain. And what happened during that time is that the stress hormones completely flood his entire body and cause error of certain upstairs brain to function. So in this case, children cannot consider their actions and cannot, think about other people's feeling at all. So in this case, a strategy is to provide the highest level of comforting responses to them through nurturing tone of voice, warm physical touch, and compromising discussion. If they are at risk of sustaining injury, like they are self-harm, involving in any self-destructive behavior, then remove them from the situations and think through the problem together. Keep in mind that don't talk about his actions' consequences. While he is dominated by the downstairs brain, he cannot really process any advice. So when you resort to soothing techniques, like I mentioned earlier, you put your child at the receptive place in order for them to open for negotiation and allow you to bring back the upstairs brain. So when he's calm, he will be listening to you, understanding what you mean, and probably he can also tap into upstairs brain using his logic and reasoning in order to, analyze and understand the situation better. So I would like to introduce you 3 strategies for this episode. The third strategy, continuing from the previous episode, is called engage, don't enrage. This strategy refers to you questioning yourself. Which part of the brain are you trying to tap into, upstairs or downstairs? Generally, we want to tap into the upstairs brain, right? You need to talk with your kids about the problem, okay? Because upstairs really love soothing techniques. For example, your child suddenly loves a necklace and wants to buy it, but both of you already left the store and she threw the tantrums. If you respond aggressively, you might solve the problem hard way, but your child ends up developing poor image of her parents and not take advantage of this problem. Instead, you can say, hey, is there anything I can do to make you happier? Or are you unhappy because I didn't buy you the necklace? She might say yes. And you might say, okay, I know you like it. How about we come later and buy it from the store? And if your child still persists, you can just reaffirm your stance even more that, sometimes we might buy something even bigger from the store if you wait and be patient. So in this case, you teach your child to make decisions and also practice patient and logical thinking ability. And strategy 5 and 6 are pretty similar. Strategy 4 is about use it or lose it. And this one refers to, the facts that your upstairs brains just become stronger and more healthy when you use it frequently. So in order to help your child use more often, you need to engage them in thinking using logic, in tapping into their upstairs brain, in asking some sort of hypothetical questions that help them exercise their upstairs brain. Strategy 5 is move it or lose it. It's about moving the body to avoid losing the mind. So this means that sometimes your child just becomes angry all of a sudden out of nowhere and we don't understand why. Kids are just like that. Probably everything doesn't have to make sense. It just happened that way. This technique might help them in a way that they can restore their upstairs brain and have access to that higher order thinking by just doing some physical exercise like running, like jogging, like moving their body up and down. As long as they can do some physical actions, in some ways can help bridge the gap between the downstairs and the upstairs brain together and help the child. And this is all. Thank you so much. So next episode, I will be talking about 2 types of memory and way to tap into this power. Stay tuned and see you in the next episode.